Hey now, Matt from the Star Wars Time Show, trying something new with our AHSOKA series breakdowns this season because, well, I am handicapped, so it's hard to run a workstation, therefore I can't do my precise scripts, little videos, shorts, this, that, and the other thing, so we're just going to do one large breakdown, alright? So reviews, top moments, Easter eggs, all that fun stuff. Sound good? Alright, stick with me. This will be spoiler heavy and hopefully entertaining and not full of a bunch of hum-has and uhs and buts. Alright, my friends, strap in, here we go. Alright, hey now, so let's start with the review of the AHSOKA premiere, which consisted of 2 episodes. Episode 1, Master and Apprentice, Episode 2, Toil and Trouble. And I have to say, it was a great decision by Disney and Lucasfilm to release these back-to-back because I don't think the premiere would have hit as hard without them, thanks to that killer cliffhanger we had at the Episode 1 when Sabine, kind of took a Qui-Gon to the torso, if you know what I'm talking about. But overall, first impressions of the AHSOKA series are very high here at SWTS HQ. I absolutely enjoyed both episodes. I, for one, appreciated the slow burn pace. I like that they're trying to world build. They're really adding to the mystery of this whole Thrawn thing, the ancient Night Sisters from Arcana, the pathway to Paradia, introducing new lore like that's obviously going to get fleshed out. That to me is fantastic. I love when new lore gets introduced in the Star Wars and we learn about it both through the existing episode and possibly through material that has been presented before. And Dave Filoni is obviously an expert at making those connections, connecting the dots, if you will. So I enjoyed the slow burn. I found the production value to be quite high. AHSOKA to me felt like a cinematic experience. It didn't really feel like The Mandalorian or The Book of Boba Fett, some of the other Disney Plus series. Now, there were times where you could tell that, hey, they were in the volume, but for the most part, the production, both with the VFX, practical shoots, the saber fights, the action, everything seemed to be of high quality. I love the use of wipes to transition scenes. That's something you really didn't get in the, Mando TV series. So I really dug how Dave's eye kind of worked for this premiere. In fact, he and Steph, Dave did Episode 1, Steph Green did Episode 2. I think they both did fantastic jobs directing. Obviously, Episode 1 probably hit a little bit harder for hardcore Star Wars fans. But overall, just a great succession of AHSOKA content between Episode 1 and 2. I have to also mention Kevin Kiner's score, which, quite frankly, is probably the all-star of AHSOKA's debut. I mean, yeah, we love Rosario, we love the characters, we love seeing Rebels in live action, but without Kevin Kiner's just emotionally taxing score, I mean, it's rough sometimes, especially if you have a history with the Rebels. He knows how to kind of hit those woodwinds and those chords he was using to kind of pull on the strings, just like John Williams used to do in the Skywalker trilogy with his musical scores. So I found the music to be absolutely fantastic, stand out, in fact. And I think we have a new banger in that Sabine intro theme that we got on Lothal that definitely rivals the tracks featured in Andor for Neamos, and then one in Mandalorian for the Adelphi Squadron base. Loved the music, so Kevin Kiner killing it with his live-action debut. I also have to talk about the bad guys. I mean, hey, we all love our good guys, especially when we have some history with them, with the Rebels, Hera, Chopper, Sabine, AHSOKA, so on and so forth. But I have to say that the bad guys, to me, so far, Baylan, Shin, Morgan, Marok, just are awesome. They're intriguing. They're getting plot focused. They have their own narrative. AHSOKA isn't just all about, hey, what are the good guys doing? I love that the premiere spent a lot of time focusing on both what AHSOKA and her gang were up to and trying to respond to this Thrawn mystery, as well as Morgan, Baylan, Shin, and Marok. So I really appreciate how the bad guys are being treated so far in AHSOKA. They feel more than just paper villains. And I have to say, personally, I think the combo of Baylan and Shin are some of the best new Star Wars characters we've gotten in quite some time. I mean, Ray, R.I.P. my man, but he is fantastic as Balin. He is a presence on screen. You can feel the force power coming out of him. He almost looks like a Malgus, albeit with his hair and all that stuff. And then I think the breakout star of this series, I have to say, I mean, yeah, Natasha Liu Bordizzo kills it as Sabine, but I think Ivana's Shin Hati is my go-to. Like, yeah, I really dig this new Star Wars character. I can't wait to see her get further developed and where she may go. And I am still sticking to my prediction from yesterday's show on the Star Wars Time Show. Make sure to check it out, youtube.com/Star Wars Time Show, that Shin will turn. I think she's going to turn all this, but I just love the bad guys. They're great. Even no speaking Marok. I mean, he looked rad as hell as Snake Eyes Star Wars. That little, saber twirl at the end, and then Ahsoka's money sidestep boss move. I mean, just all great stuff. Obviously, another high point for me are the Rebels connections. I really felt that Rebels narrative, that we got in the animated series in live action, especially when Hera was on screen. I really think Hera is the key to really tying all the Rebels connections together, because just like she did in the animated series, she is kind of the mom here. So I love those moments, and especially her talking to Sabine, trying to pump her up, make her feel good. It felt picture perfect for how Hera was with Sabine back in Star Wars Rebels. So the Rebels connections are fantastic. Chopper is an absolute badass, flexing like a Mac Daddy, dropping that tracker. I mean, it's vintage Rebels action, and this is why you need to go back and watch that series if you have not. Ezra, obviously, I mean, he's part of the Rebels connection, but I will say I had a Pavlonian reaction to every mention or holo recording of Ezra, and I think some of that was due to Kevin Kiner's theme that he would use when Ezra is being discussed or viewed. But it's just the history I have with the character and the franchise and Rebels in general. I mean, the guy was a true hero. Without his sacrifice on Lothal, you get none of the Skywalker glory that came after it. So I like that he kind of got that spotlight as this hero that sacrificed himself like a Jedi would. But as I said, anytime I would see the recording or hear his theme, I would almost start to tear up. I mean, it was very Pavlovian, so I appreciate that, and that's a job well done by Dave Filoni and his team. Also got to touch on Natasha Sabine. I do think outside of the bad guys, Sabine was the standout. Natasha just fully embodies the character. It felt just like the animated version. The sass is there, the toughness, kind of being ignorant and hard-headed. I like, how Hera is like, well, she is a Mandalorian, by the way. So it just all great stuff, and plus she just looks fantastic. I mean, everything about this series so far is hitting all the right marks for me. In addition to, like I said, some of the new lore coming in, talking about the Night Sister ancients from a whole other galaxy, Balin dropping this whole Paradia thing and how it used to be a tale for Jedi younglings. I mean, that to me is very intriguing stuff. Can't wait to see where it goes. So if I had two thumbs, they'd both be up for this episode. It was fantastic. All right, so let's focus in on a few top moments that stood out to me, starting obviously with the Balin and Shin arrival to kick off the AHSOKA premiere. It just kind of set the tone that these two are badasses. He is not just some lunatic dark side freak. I mean, he is very dedicated and methodical, and as I said, he is an imposing force to behold. And then you have Shin, who is almost the opposite of him. She's tiny, diminutive, but stealthy, quick, super fast, taking people out before you can even blink an eye. So I love their arrival and then the ultimate rescue to set up the major plot of Morgan Elsbeth. Next top moment for me was a simple one. It was a scene where Hera and Ahsoka are talking about enlisting Sabine for help, and then Hera asks about Ezra, like, hey, do you really think he's alive? Can we would we be able to find him? And I don't know, it was touching. I mean, I go back to his sacrifice and the bond he had with all them. And again, Hera kind of being the mom, and it just felt very motherly, this scene, and really helped to center the Ahsoka series back on some of the narrative threads from the Rebels franchise. Up next, we gotta talk about the Sabine intro. More particular, her intro music. I mean, that scene was just kick-ass. It was a great little action beat. The music really complemented kind of what was going on. The back and forth between Sabine and the E-Wing pilot, and then her little maneuver to kind of skid under the other E-Wing. It just was badass, and it was a perfect intro for Natasha Liu Bordizzo's Sabine. Next top moment is the Hera Sabine pep talk. So this came in, the Sabine versus Shin saber duel at the end of episode 1. Great looking lightsaber duel. I like the speed of it, the power to it. It did feel like both of these characters know how to wield the blade. And obviously we ended with the great cliffhanger. I know a lot of you are upset that Qui-Gon was seemingly the only Force user now that can't survive a stab to the chest, but if you look, I mean, Shin did kind of hit her to the side, so, you know, at worst, it just pierced a lung or two and a kidney, but hey, it's Star Wars, get over it. Next top moment, the Hera Sabine pep talk. You know, Sabine's recovering, Hera's on the hologram, and Sabine's kind of feeling a little bad for herself, you know. She's all bummed out that Ahsoka isn't really keen in taking her back in as a Padawan, and that she lost the map. And it went back to that Rebels connection. I mean, Hera was there essentially parenting Sabine and telling her what she needed to hear so she could move on and prepare herself to rejoin Ahsoka. So it was just a nice little nod back to the whole Rebels era. And then finally, you got to talk about my man Chopper, the murder bot extraordinaire, and the whole chase was great, but really the standout moment is when he's arguing with Hera about if she went through his stuff as he's looking for the tracker to throw on. And then obviously, you know, he finds it and he's like, oh, there it is, and he throws it on, and then he does his little bicep flex like the Mac Daddy droid that he is. So that stuff was just absolutely fantastic. So those are the top moments from this episode. Now let's get into mostly Star Wars references from Rebels, a few Easter eggs there. And there were a few. I mean, obviously we have to start with the opening crawl. That is definitely a nod to proper Star Wars, even though it was done more like the crawl in Rogue One, but it was a nice thing to kind of catch people up. Then we got a Home One mention and actually saw Home One itself. So that was pretty legit, and if you look, I'm pretty sure that's the ghost there as they're pulling into the hangar. So some nice mentions to OT era Star Wars. In terms of the golden orbs, yes, I mean those are star maps. Star maps were introduced in Knights of the Old Republic. I mean, they look just like it. I'm not saying that these are Rakatan. It sounds like they're maybe repurposing some of that canon, and that the Night Sisters came from this other galaxy, and they kind of set up on this Arcana planet, but that was 100% the same looking star map that you would have got in KOTOR. And these, I'm guessing, are Night Sisters. They kind of have that vibe just a little bit. You also had to appreciate that Ahsoka is still using the Fulcrum code name, this time with the New Republic. That's what she was referred to as with the Rebel Alliance, so it's nice that she kept that. Hey, I know we've seen it in trailers, but we got to mention, seeing Lothal in live action was pretty sweet. The mural in live action was pretty great. But even better, we got to see Ryder Azadi in live action, who was played by Clancy Brown, who voiced him in Rebels, and also has voiced Savage Opress, and was that one dude in Mandalorian. We also got to see live-action Hykel, who was a fairly prominent character on Lothal from the Rebel series, met up with Ezra in the Imperial Academy when Ezra was on a mission there, so that was a nice little reference and callback. When we meet Sabine, you can hear the E-Wing pilot and her. They're using Spectre as their call sign. That's what the Ghost crew, the Star Wars Rebels, used back in the animated series. Here we get to see all of Ezra's helmets. We know he liked to collect his buckets. But more importantly, you can see the styled one that Sabine made for him out of a Scout Trooper helmet there. All right, while we're in the apartment, You get to see a glimpse of her spray gun. That's her paint gun, obviously made very famous in the animated franchise. But the Phoenix symbol there, I don't know if that's from her old outfit or maybe some Ezra scrap, but I figured might as well touch on that as well. Okay, so we did get confirmation and a name drop of the Night Sisters of Dathomir, and we got a new planet here. So this is Arcana, as Morgan Elsbeth explains that her people, the Night Sisters, were an ancient race from another galaxy that kind of came here and set up that temple. Now, while not a direct egg, I think everyone got some Darth Maul probe droid vibes when Shin released her little white probe to look for Sabine on Lothal. I got Maul vibes in general for this entire scene, and I think that was on purpose, so that's why it's making this recap here. The Ahsoka Force Whispers, I don't know if anyone else picked up on that, but especially when she went to go investigate Sabine's apartment, kind of like in Fallen Order, how Cal could, she was picking up Force Whispers, essentially, to help her kind of piece together what happened. So that was a nice little nod to the video game. It's like the video game is getting in some Jedi powers into canon now. Okay, we had another new planet mentioned in Cetos, and we learned that this, again, was settled by these ancients, these Night Sister ancients, and that came from a different galaxy that you can reach through the Denab system, which is a reference to a moment from Return of the Jedi when Lando talks about his maneuvers at the Battle of Denab. Or was that Tanab? Who cares? While this isn't a direct reference, I mean, again, you can just see the star map look here, but the pathway to Paradia, let's not sleep on that. I think we're getting some new lore created here that it sounds like the galaxy in general may have heard about, and now they may realize this ancient galaxy, lost galaxy. So keep your eyes open on that. And then to kind of wrap this thing up, how about that Eye of Sion mentioned from Morgan? That's what this whole super hyperspace ring is called, and I believe it is a reference to Darth Sion, because the dude literally had a thing with his eye. Just go look it up, Darth Sion, the Eye of Sion. I do think they're related. I'm not saying she's dark side or anything like that. I just think it was a nice little nod that Dave put in there to canonize Sion a bit further. And then finally, you gotta love the look at a live-action Phantom. I know we've seen the live-action Ghost. I don't think we've seen the live-action Phantom, so it looked fantastic. All right, people, like I said, I knew this would go long. I'll do some, hopefully there'll be time jumps in here you can skip around, but this is how we'll be doing things, at least going forward. So hopefully you enjoyed it. This is Matt signing off for the Star Wars Time Show, doing a full breakdown, review, recap, top moments, Easter eggs, Star Wars references of the Ahsoka premiere, episodes 1 and 2. Don't forget, on Tuesdays, 5 p. East on YouTube, Nick and I will do our live stream where we will both further discuss this show and then speculate on what may happen next week on episode 3. Don't forget, there's always time for Star Wars time, and if you like this type of content, please give us a sub on YouTube, socials, and podcast platforms.